with our Bibles in 2 Kings chapter 16. So go ahead and open your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 16.
You could always look on this and see if his head is in the way.
There's a whole stack of Bibles over there. So yeah.
You have no excuse.
Present of you. And then obviously it's on your phone.
Bring your Bible to Bible.
Who would think of that?
Yeah, right. What? Why would I need a Bible for Bible? This sounds like a middle school.
Here's one. It's in the Old Testament. For First Kings.
Alright, I think I've given everyone ample opportunity, but we're in chapter 16, verse 1.
I don't think anybody's done that to you for a while, so I felt it was necessary. You could sit there. Thank you. If you sit, you could.
So today's Bible study is, I'll be teaching part of it, and my wife Maggie will be teaching part of it. It's celebrating the sanctity of life, so let's go into this. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. So my question for you is, Ahaz. You've heard that name before. I guarantee every single one of you have heard of that king before. Now, before you give the obvious wrong answer, this is not Ahab, one letter difference. That's the guy who's married to Jezebel. He deals with Elijah. But everyone has heard the name of Ahaz. Can anyone, for 100 Bible study points, tell me where you hear Ahaz? I'll give you a hint. It's around Christmas time you hear his name. I know we usually just forget the names when we read them. John, I think you know this, and you're just being shy.
It's the king with Elijah.
That's Ahab.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, okay. So, here it is. You've all heard it because this has to do with... It has to do when Isaiah says to him, behold, the virgin shall give birth and give birth to a son, and his name shall be Emmanuel. That prophecy, which we read every single Christmas time, is given to King Ahaz. So that's who this is. Let's hear about it. 16:1. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign. Good young king. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God, as his father David had done, which means ancestor here, but walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even burned his son as an offering, according to the despicable practices of the nations, whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And he sacrificed and made offerings on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. The reason I'm bringing this up is that I want to talk about that phrase. He sacrificed, he burned his son as an offering. Some translations say he passed his sons through the flames. And we actually know about this a bit because what this is there's this god that was worshipped during this time, whose name was Moloch. 16. We're in 2 Kings 16. Yeah. And Moloch was this great bull god. And if you saw a statue of Moloch, I've seen the artwork done of him. It was this great bull god, and in his torso were carved multiple ovens for sacrifices to this god. And so what happened is they would literally place their child in an oven and burn them up. Now this is obviously evil. This is obviously wicked and sinful. This is obviously detestable and abhorrable. This is why it gets special mention out of all of his sins. It gets mentioned here. But maybe the thing we have to ask ourselves is, why would anyone ever do that? And this is the answer to it. They thought by doing this, by sacrificing their sons, they would somehow gain some sort of special power or favor or success over their enemies or in their life. They thought they'd get health and wealth and prosperity all by murdering a child. That's what they thought. And this drives home the irony. This drives home the irony that what is Ahaz promised? When he needs a sign, he's promised a baby. And he's the one who sacrificed his own son. Now, this is not just a fact to look at how terrible they were then. There is nothing new under the sun. If we look to what we are doing nowadays in our own society with abortion, what is the promise given to people who have an abortion? They're saying if you don't have an abortion, your life will be ruined. But if you have an abortion, well, you won't have to go through childbirth. And it won't affect your economic future. And it won't affect your education. And indeed, you'll be happier and better and be able to have your rights as an individual if you have that abortion. So sacrifice that child in order that you may have prosperity later in life. And I think that is the temptation for all of us, to put our own needs ahead of those of another life. And so maybe we're not any better. Yeah, we don't worship a giant bull god Moloch, but we do worship money. We do worship prosperity. We do worship our own American ideals. And maybe sometimes those are just as dangerous, if they still result in the death of the innocent. Right. After that, you guys come up, Iggy. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know her, this is my wife, Maggie May. She's an RN. She also works at the Lennon Pregnancy Center in Dearborn Heights, where she is the nurse manager for their ultrasound unit. She does a variety of things there, of which I'm very proud of, including talking to people who are considering an abortion or unsure what to do with their pregnancy at the time. She also has started a thing where she works with pre- and postpartum depression, which is a great program. Anything else I should introduce for her? Mother of 5 beautiful children, all of them more beautiful than the last. Oh yeah, Regina's listening there. Regina, you're beautiful too. Very beautiful. The light of my eye, joy of your father. I'm just, please start talking to save me from myself.
Okay, sit down.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am very glad to talk during January again. I've done this before. I think it's been a little bit of time. I did it one January before, a couple years ago, but January is known as the Sanctity of Human Life month, and next Sunday actually is the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. That's because on January 22nd, Roe versus Wade was passed down in 1973, so that is why that day is when we remember all the children lost and how important life is. So today, what I really wanted to talk about was share some facts, some data, and a bit of apologetics, because that's what we need in the church, is how to talk about abortion with others, right? And just understanding abortion a little bit. Apologetics is reasoned arguments, justification of something, right? So when we talk about pregnancy, let's be very clear about what the fact of the matter is. That's part of what's really important on our side, right? We've got science. Fertilization, or conception, marks the beginning of human development. It's the start of a brand new, unique, genetically distinct human being and the true onset of pregnancy. The living single-cell human embryo formed at fertilization is a new human at the first stage of human development. Defining the start of human life as occurring at some point later than fertilization ignores and contradicts long-standing scientific fact. This is very simply understood. Only a continuously living embryo can divide from one cell into two, two into four, and so on throughout the pregnancy. It's equally true that a dead embryo cannot grow, cannot divide, cannot change, cannot consume oxygen, cannot replicate DNA, cannot become alive at some point. As a scientific question to argue that a human embryo or fetus comes alive at some point beyond fertilization is to support a modern version of the theory of spontaneous generation, which was debunked 160 years ago. So starting at when life begins, of course, is an important part of understanding what we believe as pro-life members of society, of standing up for the life of that innocent human being, no matter how small they are, no matter the fact that they are the tiniest that they can be. They are, at that moment, alive and a unique human being. So, I mean, it's a simple scientific fact that's important to state because well, it's a matter of fact. It's not a euphemism which the defense of abortion is surrounded by euphemisms, like it's just a clump of cells, right? Or what are some of the other things that are said?
Bun in the oven.
A bun in the oven, any others? A product of conception. So yeah, just a product, a problem to solve. So we have fact, not just euphemisms. So our words can either underscore or undermine the humanity of others. I found that an article in Pregnancy Help News, which that's something that you could easily access. Just look up Pregnancy Help News. A woman named Susan Maines wrote a really great article on the importance of our words in the fight of pro-life versus pro-choice. And I'll say that, her quote again, because I think it's really powerful. Our choice of words can either underscore or undermine the humanity of others. So let's think of the way that abortion advocates talk about the abortion. So how they frame it, their choice of words. Abortion is a matter of reproductive health care. Abortion equals reproductive freedom. Abortion empowers women. Does anyone want to tear apart any of those?
Reproduction's already happened. You're not getting any health care for reproduction. It's already taken place.
All right, we're gonna make you repeat that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. You're gonna have to say it again.
Okay, take two. We're doing take two.
It's not reproductive health because reproduction has already taken place. That's just a scientific fact.
And want to hit any of the others?
Mike, do we have the other microphone, Mike?
Mike's got the mic.
Well, pregnancy is not a disease. It's the body doing what the body is supposed to do, what God designed it to do. And the problem with having so many abortions is, I think, our sexual lack of ethics and our devaluation of marriage and the marriage vows. If we didn't have the sexual freedom license, we don't even use the word adultery and fornication anymore.
That's because
It's got a toggle switch.
That's good. That's because those words sound scary and not nice. We don't need to be nice when we're talking about the pro-life stance. We need to just state the truth. It's, yep, adultery is adultery, right? Yep. Was there anyone else with combating those abortion advocates' marketing words? Abortion equals reproductive freedom. Abortion empowers women. Does it empower women?
No.
In the sad sense that you control what goes on inside your body.
In the sad sense that it controls what goes on inside your body. But then, in the same sense of that, you can end up with things that are out of your control, the mental and physical side effects of having an abortion. So there is a lie there.
Reproductive health, reproductive freedom, women's right to choose, my body, my choice. They're all strategies, mechanisms to make it seem like it's not as bad as in reality what it really is, and make sin seem like it's not sin.
Exactly.
It's murder,
Exactly.
plain and simple.
So whether talking about the unborn health care or women's rights, the pro-abortion rhetoric, they mask ugly attitudes. Exactly. So what's really being said, right, is a child conceived in rape doesn't deserve to live. That person doesn't deserve to live, is what they're saying. A woman should be free to destroy her own child without guilt or remorse for any reason. That's really what they're saying. They're not going to say it that way. One's education or career is worth more than a human life. What they're saying, but they're not going to say it that way. Preborn females have no rights and are disposable. I like kind of throwing that one out there at them when they're talking about women's rights, because there are, half of the women that are, half of the children taken by abortion, approximately half, are women. And their rights are taken away from them before they even have a chance to speak up for themselves. So anytime one group insists on rights at the expense of another group's rights to live, we have a problem. What does it sound like when we take the rights of another person away at the, let me say it again, correct. At any time one group insists on rights at the expense of another group's rights, we have a problem. What does it make you think of? Slavery, discrimination,
Maybe the Holocaust. That. Up the button. Guess I'm done. Oh.
Can we get one of the handheld microphones up here for Maggie? Or we'll change it quick. All right, Ron has a comment. Ron, please fill
The
this.
rhetoric starts at pro-life. They won't call it pro-life. They call it anti-abortion.
No. They say anti-choice, they don't use the word abortion.
they'll use both, but yes, it's anti instead of our pro stance of life. I don't know, I feel like we're too nice to them also, almost, and we call them pro-choice, that's giving them that pro is positive, right? They're anti-life, like.
What we do is, we change the wording to make it more pleasant. Like, who could argue against pro-choice? That sounds good.
Exactly. The wording, how we say things makes a big difference. There was another great article I was reading from Pregnancy Help News. She said, framing not having the ability to legally kill our child as some sort of inequality is absolutely ludicrous. Let's be honest, not hide behind euphemisms like women's rights, bodily autonomy, or ending a pregnancy. Abortion kills a human being, and if we need to kill other humans to have equal rights with another set of humans, something is wrong with our idea of equality. So basically things we've already said there. So I thought that was a nice starting point of thinking of how we are, the words, of how abortion is spoken about on both sides. Some facts that I found from the World Health Organization. Around 73 million induced abortions take place worldwide each year. 73 million each year. 6 out of 10 of all unintended pregnancies and 3 out of 10 of all pregnancies end in induced abortion. 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies, which I think I saw another 45% of all pregnancies are unintended. So with the World Health Organization's fact sheet on abortion, this is what they had to say on abortion, and I find it extremely infuriating. We can discuss it, it's great, okay. Comprehensive abortion care is included in the list of essential health care services published by WHO in 2020. Abortion is a simple health care intervention that can be effectively managed by a wide range of health care workers using medication or surgical procedures. In the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, a medical abortion can also be safely self-managed by the pregnant person outside of a health care facility at home, in whole or in part. This requires that the woman has access to accurate information, quality medicines, and support from trained healthcare workers. Lack of access to safe, affordable, timely, and respectful abortion care and the stigma associated with abortion pose risks to women's physical and mental well-being throughout the life course. Inaccessibility of quality abortion care risks violating a range of human rights of women and girls, including the right to life, the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, the right to benefit from scientific progress and its realization, the right to decide freely and responsibly on the number, spacing, and timing of children, and the right to be free from torture, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment and punishment. This is what the World Health Organization calls abortion. Yes?
It's interesting that they use the right to life, the right to absence of cruel and inhuman punishment, all the things that they're inflicting on the fetus.
Thank you. Big point I wanted to point out. Anyone else have anything they want to say about that?
Yeah, I don't know, I might be getting ahead of things, but it's sometimes, if you know, could you, and you know, the people of Michigan have spoken, so we can't do anything about anything anymore. But you know what groups like, you know, Right to Life in Michigan and Lutherans for Life, what they will be focusing on now, because, you know, we can't focus anymore about, you know, stopping it's in the...
Actually, yeah, I was going to talk, a little bit later with Proposition 3, some of the things with that. That's a great question. I think I will go ahead and hold it, and we'll talk about whose definition of the World Health Organization's definition of abortion.
I have to disagree that there's nothing else we can do. I think there's much we can do. We can still support pregnancy centers, and even more so because we see how it's just the lie has perpetuated. So we need to be even more diligent as we go about what we need to do in this world is to spread the truth, because the lies are so pervasive.
Exactly.
If it's healthcare, then why do so few states report adverse reactions to abortion?
No, I thought, was that rhetorical? Yes, exactly. Like, unfortunately, there is not enough reporting surrounding abortion care.
So people aren't aware, they don't know consequences.
Thankfully, there are some statistics and reports that I'll get to, but yes, it is underreported, the adverse effects.
I think we have to go a step farther. We have to get with our young men and women and do some training in sustaining themselves from so much involved in activity, sexual activity. Because once you are there, you have a consequence that you must pay. But so many of our young people, and I'm not talking about just girls, I'm talking about young men as well.
Takes two to tango, right?
We need to train them that it is need to be sustained and wait until you find that perfect person to bring another human being in this life. Because once we know sometime those children come in this world, they are abused, they are put in foster homes. So it's a lot of abuse if we don't get our young people and train them, because sometimes they don't have that kind of training in their home. They really do not.
That's very true. And just a point to bring up, the last thing you said there, unfortunately, is what abortion proponents will say is a good reason to have an abortion, because they're just going to be abused or put in foster care. And that would be horrible for them. They'll have no good life. I mean, are you in charge of if a person can turn out okay after abuse or foster care? Is their life automatically unimportant because that's where they're at? No, we know that. It's very important, yes, to reach both male and female, for sure, because men are important, often pushed out of the equation. It's a woman's body. What are they talking about abortion rights for? Which, of course, is ridiculous. They need to be included in this talk. You're right. Goodness, I feel like there's something else, but you had
I was just going to jump in with a comment about rights, because rights is an interesting language to you. Rights must come from somebody. And so the World Health Organization is saying that somebody has rights. Well, who has given those rights? And that's an interesting comment. Generally in the secular world, we're seeing this with groups like the United Nations and the World Health Organization. They will declare the rights that people are guaranteed, but they don't say where they come from. And I'd even say, to be critical of our founding fathers, they would use the term inalienable rights, which came from where? And so that's something where we need to watch out for. People will claim rights, but they won't say where they come from. Obviously, as Christians, we understand our rights only come from God. And claiming any other rights not given to us specifically by promises of God is in its way sort of setting up a false hope and sort of a false sort of promises that are not from God. So I've seen this language a lot, going people claiming rights, but maybe a good question is, where did those rights actually come from?
Go ahead, Bruce. So when Michigan voted, what changed from Roe versus Wade to what we have now in the state of Michigan?
That gets into Prop 3. We'll get that in just a minute. Thanks, though. Yes, we will touch on Prop 3. Go ahead, Bruce.
We're talking about abortion because that's the question that the other side wants to force us to. It's really under a bigger umbrella of death. Shortly before the reversal of Roe v. Wade, when it went back to the states, and then it became a question of how many weeks before something was viable, people were talking about, there were accounts of doctors birthing children, putting them on a shelf, and asking the mother whether they wanted them to live or not. There were also articles about people proposing removal of children up to maybe the age of 4 or 5. You know, so this isn't a static question. It will be brought to us as a static question, but it's always got to be in context of a larger one.
Abortion is a problem of a much larger issue, and I believe one of the biggest issues is the demise of the family. That is a big reason we have abortion. Yes, and like Ms. Pauline was saying too, like it is so much more than just the killing of that baby. There is a bigger issue at hand: the training of children, making sure they have safe, loving homes, all these things that it's a bigger issue.
I just really want, excuse me, I just quickly wanted to reiterate what you had said. The abortion rights groups will try to silence men out of this argument by saying they have no voice in it whatsoever. And nothing could be further from the truth. We have to, as men, be ready to have an argument and be ready to face off with people who try and push us out of that argument.
100%. The wording that really set me off on this list of what of World Health Organization's definition of abortion, really, like Phyllis was saying, really what threw me the most was including the right to life. And that is one of the biggest things that the pro-life movement is trying to help and let people see, that all people have the right to life. That includes that unborn child. It also listed the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. Abortion is not free from serious risks and side effects, including mental distress. It is well documented, and it is often tried to be refuted by the pro-choice side. The mental and physical side effects, not necessarily immediate, which some of the immediates are hemorrhaging, which is extreme bleeding, infection, or death. There are long-term effects like mental health problems. There is a link to breast cancer, which is constantly the pro-choice side tries to keep refuting, but the research is there. So I found some statistics from Heartbeat International. For those who don't know, Heartbeat Internet. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Just a point that sitting here thinking about the problems in our society today. We are taking on one mountain right here, no question about that. But we think about what's happening on the other end of the spectrum with euthanasia, with the medical and the political discussions made that once you get to be 65, they won't give you a knee replacement anymore. Or if you get to be 75, they eliminate the medical insurance from it. So we are really working in our whole society of controlling the population. I agree with everything that you're saying, but that's just one part of what's happening in society today. If anybody ever read the book by Jonathan Swift about going to the country where there's tiny people, he also visits the country where these people are 100 and 200 and 300 years old, and they don't know what to do with them. So they sit them on a swing on the front porch and let them sit there for 24 hours. Now, we are trying to control this by your age, so if you want anything medically done, do it before you're 65, that's all I'm saying.
Canada is kind of a scary place right now, don't you think? Where they are increasingly lowering the age of it's okay for anyone, basically. What age, do you know more about?
There's no age.
There's no age limit now in Canada for when a person can be euthanized. Yes, it is a culture of death. Abortion is under that bigger umbrella, and it is a huge problem. When we are speaking life, we need to use the importance of words of how important a person is. And one of those things is starting with when you're talking maybe even with a person who has different views than you, who maybe think it's fine for euthanasia or abortion, to start with talking about how important their life is.
Speaking of the situation in Canada is very good for us to keep an eye on because they're our neighbor and they have a very similar culture to ours. But what they have done is they have in-home euthanasia kits that they will send you. And what they will do is they have guidelines on how to do it. You can look up all this information. There are also stories out there of people who, talking to their healthcare providers, for example, there was a Canadian veteran who needed a wheelchair ramp installed. And it got bogged down in the bureaucracy, as happens. And talking over the phone with somebody about saying, like, when can I expect this? They're saying, well, if you find your life so unlivable, we could send you one of these kits. Yeah, and the thing is, it's being celebrated in Canada because it's saying, look how much money we have saved in health. Because, well, since we have introduced this, because these people are no longer burdens on society, but rather we are reaping benefits from them terminating their lives. That's what's going on. So yeah, and none of this is hidden. You can go look it up there. I know as Americans we tend to focus on U.S. news, but...
Hemlock Society.
What?
There's a group called the Hemlock Society that are all about...
Well, let's get you the microphone, Phil.
There was a group worldwide that was called the Hemlock Society, and they were purporting this, and they showed mechanisms on how you could do it at home, and why people wanted to do it. So it's out there.
Again, we're coming back to your point, you know, about enriching lives through the loss of others.
All right, so I have some statistics I found from Heartbeat International. Heartbeat International is an organization that supports more than 3,000 pregnancy help organizations across the United States, and then there are pregnancy help organizations internationally. Heartbeat internationally, all across the world, in all inhabited continents, Heartbeat is there. They compile these, the white pages, they call them. So many different statistics are used to make arguments both for and against abortion. It can often be difficult to differentiate fact from opinion in these debates and in the media, given that most media organizations take a stance one way or the other. So these statistics were compiled from government, pro-choice, pro-life, and unbiased, so they're unbiased fact sheets. So it's a little bit of facts then. In the United States, abortion rates are at the lowest since Roe v. Wade, but unfortunately they are back on the rise. Abortion rate continues to fall in almost every demographic. Most abortion patients are in their 20s and have already had at least one previous child. African American women are 2.7 times more likely to experience abortion than white women. Additionally, almost half of women experience abortion are below the poverty line. More than 1/3 of abortion recipients report that they attended church at least once a month at the time of their first abortion, and 70% of women who have had an abortion indicate their religious preference is Christian. So among women who have had an abortion, only 7% of women discussed their abortion decision with anyone at church. 3/4 say that the church had no influence on their decision to terminate a pregnancy. 2/3 say church members judge single women who are pregnant. A majority, 54%, think the church's oversimplified decisions about pregnancy options. Fewer than half believe churches are prepared to help with decisions about unwanted pregnancies. Only 3 in 10 think churches give accurate advice about pregnancy options. Even among the regular churchgoers, 52% of women who had abortions say that church had no influence on their decision. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, not on that, but I just heard a report of a doctor stating that 80% of pregnancy problems are preventable. So that was another big selling point.
Pregnancy problems?
Health-related problems. So
Okay.
that was another big selling point to the pro-choice crowd, before the election, Proposition 3, that it's going to save lives. It's going to save lives.
Women
of
die
women.
from childbirth, yes, exactly. That's what they're saying. There's more women die from childbirth than from having an abortion, yes. Pauline?
Maggie, I am a firm believer of education. And I'm sitting here, if children are not educated at school, at home, in church, where are they going to find some of this information? As I used to tell Charles and Keith, your mom and dad are your best teachers. Don't listen to your friends out there, because that's where our children get a lot of this false information. So we do have to step up to the plate. Just like you say, the church doesn't always embrace these ideas and say, I need to be open to teaching our young men and women in our congregation. Our schools need to take a better education point of view of teaching. Our parents need to take a better education in teaching young men and women what need to be done and what should not be done. I mean, that's the only way I think that we are going to solve some of the issues of America, and not always putting everything on a greenback dollar. As my daddy used to say, money is not evil, but the love of money is the root of all. To love it, you do anything for it. We have to turn that around, and we have to be better role models for our young people.
That is a huge part of me bringing up these statistics of how people view abortion in the church. It's something that starts at home, starts in the church, starts at school to a degree of what we're talking about, how important life is, to set that culture of the importance of life. This is nap time and Joe's sad, sorry.
While living in Detroit, on Halloween, I included pro-life tracts with the candy. It made the news on one station. A lady down the street apparently was an announcer for local TV station.
It's the little things we can do even sometimes of just sharing our stance. That was just last Sunday when we had the white crosses, right? Honestly, thinking of those white crosses, they made me think of, in January, a lot of times churches will place out little white crosses in remembrance of all of the children lost to abortion. And it really made me think of that too. So I feel like it's stating more than one thing, that yes, I'm a Christian, but also, yes, I believe all life is important.
So Pauline keeps stealing all my comments with their way. But, you know, as we said, and you think about all this stuff, and you see how darkness is everywhere, how people are blinded, spiritually blinded to the truth. I mean, you look at this, a lot of this, and it's like, what? How can you think that? It's spiritual blindness. I mean, it's things that people can't see, that we can see. So, you know, the bottom line is we understand the truth about this. And as we look at our world, we lament. I understand more and more what the book of Lamentations, what that word Lamentations means. We're lamenting. You know, we're looking at this. We're looking at young families. We're looking at people who are raising kids and saying, like, they need to know, they need to teach their kids the value, like Pauline said. Are we teaching young men that if you do what you want to do, it can lead to the death of a baby? Or obviously the young women, like, if you do whatever you want to do, if you walk through those steps, you do this, then what are you going to do? Is that going to lead to that? Walking them through and teaching them that. So that's one part of it, obviously. But I think where the church is kind of stuck. And when I say the church, I mean our church and all churches. And when you go through those statistics, like, well, how do you deal with this? I think we don't know what to do because, well, if we ever run across someone, you know, do we even have a plan of what we would say? If we run across a single pregnant mother, what would we do? So often the church has no plan. It's just, oh, they walked in and what do we do? And we say things, we say dumb things, we say inappropriate things about their life and their choices because we don't have a plan. I think that what Pauline said is absolutely true. That the answer is not to just sit and lament about it. It's to say as a congregation, we're going to choose this particular issue. And it could be this issue or any issue, really. And this is going to be something we're going to be ready for. It has to be something we go on mission about. Not just, well, that's sad, and if it ever comes our way, we'll have to deal with it. No, we commit to it. We commit to the positive message of what it is, and we're ready so that when someone comes in, half of our congregation knows exactly what to say. The only way that light can shine is if we're ready to shine it. If it just happens to come across our door, it's not going to work because it's going to be too, you know how that works when someone surprises you with something, you're not ready. But if you're ready for that Jehovah's Witness to come to your door, or that Mormon to come to your door, or that pregnant single person to come into your congregation, you're going to know what to say to be able to help them and be there for him. And some churches are really ready for that. I know one, Risen Christ in Plymouth, Rennie Kaufman's church. I mean, that's something they are stepping towards, to be a refuge in that area for anyone who is struggling with pregnancy. I mean, they even have it right out on their sign. If you're pregnant and scared, talk to us. So committing to that as a congregation, I would ask all of us to pray about it. Is that something that, if it's something that grieves our heart, let's act on it. Let's not just talk about it.
Go ahead, Bruce. Can I just add really quick? It'll just be really quick, I'm sorry. Because I feel like there's a part of being ready too that isn't necessarily being educated on everything. And it's being ready to love these people. Sorry, I had it happen when I was a teacher in high school, in a private high school, and she knew that I cared about her. And so that is so important, to not just be ready with all the right answers right at that moment, but to be ready to care for them. And I mean, to this day, I feel so honored. I've looked on her Facebook to see the boy that she had when she was in high school, and she was ready. Her friends were telling her to get an abortion, and I don't know why she came to me, but I know now that it was a safe place. So us being that safe place, not quick to judge somebody on the mistakes. I mean, literally, she came to me and I cried with her like just bald. I felt so bad. She was so young, you know, but I was pregnant at the time with my son, and I think that was also part of it too. Like, our kids are the same age. It's just weird, you know, and it was a student of mine, but being ready to love people who are dealing with that, no matter what their age, no matter how we feel about this. From this point on, now it's just, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? There's nothing we can prevent that at that point anymore. You know, like us being mad, us criticizing, whatever, that's not going to help the situation. Telling them it's a sin at that point is not going to help the situation. You know, coming at them with love, and then we got the resources to know she had people standing by her to help her at that point was so important. And it's just a reminder sometimes, like sometimes we have to put aside all those religious thoughts we might be having in our head and say, let's just reach out, love, care, compassion, and help them through this, because it's sometimes all those rules that are what's holding people up from going to the church for help and seeking out what they need and what we know they need.
I hear a lot of wonderful theoretical things. We should, we must, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. How do you convert it into action then? The way we do it as a congregation is everything around here, according to our Constitution, is supposed to be done by a board. So I think all of us pray that one of the boards of this congregation take up this challenge and become a repository for these kinds of issues. It could be as simple as, I mean, there's wonderful information out, you know, you're quoting stuff off the internet, and it's wonderful. How do we find that? Perhaps we build a library of YouTube and links, etc. You could have tutorials. We could have regular, we could put on our prayer chain regular appropriate prayers.
I think that's a great idea, and yes, there are a lot of resources out there that, because of my work, I'm aware of, but yes, it would be great if other people had them. You're right. I love that idea. We as a church wanting to be motivated to help combat this culture of death is important. Go ahead, Karen.
I don't think we have to create a board or go to a board. If you feel like you can lead a Sunday school class of junior high schools or high schoolers, do it. When I was in high school, my Sunday school teacher was 60 years old, and I learned more from that man than my father was a Lutheran pastor, and I was so glad that I had that man in my life, because if I had ever gotten pregnant, I'd have to answer to Mr. Schwam.
All right, we're starting to run out of time. I wanted to just point out a few more little statistics here and then talk about Prop 3 real quick. The average woman choosing abortion makes the decision within a day of confirming her pregnancy and obtains an abortion within the next week. The most frequently cited reason for abortion is financial concerns, timing, partner-related reasons, and the need to focus on other children. Most women reported multiple reasons for seeking abortion. Abortions are being performed earlier and earlier in pregnancy. 56% of abortions are done by the abortion pill regimen right now, which is very dangerous and awful. Let's see. Studies have shown that the decision to have an abortion often occurs under pressure, with 64% of women reporting feeling pressured to abort. 38% of women indicate that the father of the baby was most influential in their abortion decision, followed by medical professional, the woman's mother, and a friend next. In addition, suicide rates are 6 times higher among women who have had an abortion, and 65% of women suffer trauma symptoms after an abortion. All right, so this is kind of a bit gloomy, but yes, we have some hope and some thoughts of just talking about how we as the church can be a light, and beautiful sentiments and thoughts with that, and we can do things. It's true. I read an article talking about how our battlefield has changed after Roe. So it was focused as a nation. Now it's more back to the grassroots levels again. But we're not back at square one again, though, because we have this 50 years built of the pro-life movement. Between 1968 and 1973, there was about 100 pregnancy resource centers in the country. And I think I already mentioned it, there are more than 3,000 pregnancy resource centers in the United States now. The churches and communities are coming together to work at this. Yes, there is change after Roe, and yes, we have specific problems in Michigan, specifically Proposition 3, but we have a foundation of the pro-life movement, specifically in our state. So in 2021, there was about 30,100 abortions in Michigan. In 2009, in Michigan, Michigan had the 5th most abortion procedures in the nation in 2019, and the rate is rising faster than the national average. We got a problem in Michigan, and the most abortions done in Michigan are in Wayne County. Nationwide abortions reached their lowest level in 2017, but like I said, they are increasing by small percentages. So Proposition 3 passed. What does it mean for us? Let's see, the Democrats control both House and Senate. It became law on the 24th of December, but they can't codify it until they comply with there needs to be additional legislation that will be necessary to carry it all out. So, I mean, it takes time for things to happen, right? And it is hard for this to be repealed, but we already have people in the pro-life, the right to life, working on how we would go forward with changing this. Making an amendment to the Constitution is what would have to happen, again, to repeal Proposition 3. Some things for people, if you don't remember what Proposition 3 is going to do, technically already can do. There is any healthcare professional can provide an abortion right now, including a school social worker. Proposition 3 prohibits regulation of abortion, allowing abortion up to birth. Then there's no parental consent required for children, which is sort of like, it would end up being more of a lawsuit, it's not set in stone that way, which Ross would probably be better on all that legalese stuff with that.
Well, as you were talking about this, I was thinking that, in all honesty, I don't think we'll do anything until something outrageous happens. Like if a late-term abortion or something like that. Then the public might be so shocked to say, well, we've got to put some limits on this. But this is now a big uphill battle. I mean, you've got a Democratic Supreme Court, which I presume they're all pro-choice or pro-abortion. So, but for right now, I think we're in a tough position. But I think if something happens, that would be the catalyst for us to maybe chip away at some of this.
Exactly. I did also want to point out that there is, in the state of Michigan, a House Bill number 6530, which was submitted on November 29th, a bill to prohibit limited service pregnancy centers from publishing deceptive statements regarding certain services to provide for the powers and duties of certain state and local government officials and entities to provide remedies. So basically this is saying pregnancy resource centers lie and deceive people, and we need to prosecute them if they have any wording that says that might make it seem that they provide abortion care, then they will be prosecuted. This is really just a political push and act. It is an attack, but it won't really hurt pregnancy centers because we don't do that. We don't say that we perform abortions. We don't say that we refer for abortions, but it is the start of attacking pregnancy resource centers. This is where it begins. So it has nothing has happened with it yet, it's just been put forward. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act recently. When I saw that, I was like, that was already a thing. Back, with President Bush, there was the Born Alive Infant Protection Law, but it did not go far enough in enacting penalties for medical professionals who did not provide care for children who were born alive. So it passed the House. It's probably not going to pass the Senate.
Any numbers on survivors of abortion?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I did not look into the statistics of that, but they are there. That is something, again, with the proponents of pro-choice. They're like, people don't survive abortion. They do. There are cases of, I should find that statistic. Yes, there's quite a few people who do survive abortion, and we need to protect them. Yes.
I wanted to ask two questions. One, what normally is done with an aborted fetus? And number two, that I discussed with you earlier, how successful are the pregnancy centers on assisting women to making a sane selection and choice?
The remains of fetuses are supposed to be, it's biomedical hazard that is then taken care of properly that way if they are. Unfortunately, and especially with Proposition 3, there are less restrictions on abortion facilities, so how well they are monitored on actually properly disposing of is unfortunately going to become a problem. When women come into the center not sure what they want to do, or maybe I've talked to plenty of people who they're like, well, yeah, I'm going to have an abortion. Unfortunately, I don't know the statistics, but there have been plenty of women that I've talked to that then I'll follow up with, and they went ahead and followed through with an abortion. I believe I remember seeing a statistic that with an ultrasound, 80% of women who see an ultrasound say that they will choose life. I don't remember specifics from the Lennon Center like what we have seen. And I do like to point out too, we are specifically talking about abortion, but the Lennon Center, all the people who come in like for pregnancy help for an ultrasound, they're not necessarily all of them wanting an abortion. We get quite a few people who their Medicaid hasn't kicked in and they want to see that the baby's okay. They don't have any health insurance and they need the slip of paper that we give them, which we are lab certified for the pregnancy test and can give them that to take to DHS to get on Medicaid. So we're their starting care. We are an important part in helping people see the importance of the life of their child. I feel like... was there any other? Yes.
I'll be quick here. WMUZ is always talking about that preborn ministry, which goes with what you said about the 80%, the ultrasound. They're asking for people to donate to that, so women can see the ultrasound. And 8 out of 10 they choose to keep their child. So that's a good ministry to support. And I was just going to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't almost half of the Congress vote for some bill that would not allow babies that survive abortion attempts to get medical care?
I was just talking about that, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. The Senate hasn't voted on it. It's just been through the House, and it was passed in the House to protect children born alive from abortion.
Okay.
Last question. This Bible study has biblical basis. I'll add this verse from Proverbs 21:31 to it. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all that are destitute. Speak up and defend the rights of the poor and needy. We need to work for the innocent unborn.
Thank you. It's a wonderful place to stop. Again, thank you for letting me speak today. As Ms. Pauline says, I'm all about the education, and I'm happy to talk with anyone who has questions on what we do at the Lennon Center or what is involved. Even like if you have an opportunity, like a teacher speaking with young students and you want to be a little more prepared and you have questions, ask me. I'm happy to help. It's, like I said at the beginning, talking a bit of like having a little more understanding brings for better apologetics, better defense to protect the unborn.
I do want to just have, I get the final word, I guess, which is, if any of this does hang your conscience, and you feel guilty about anything we talked about today, know there is forgiveness from God for this as well. Never forget that. And so if you feel personally convicted, confess those sins in church. We do confession and absolution. If you feel the need for private confession and absolution, feel free to come to Pastor Dan or I for that as well. It's very necessary, if you feel guilty on this or any other topic, to receive that forgiveness of sins and lead a new life in Christ. Let's close in prayer. Dear Lord God, we'd ask that you would indeed bless us and give us the words to say and the courage to say them. Dear Lord, help us to not be unprepared or ashamed of your truth, but rather ready to proclaim it. This we pray in your name. Amen.